Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled The Human Cost of the Crown, Duty of Care in the Public Eye, Episode 159. An Introduction. Welcome to this 4-part series exploring the firm, not as a family, but as a business. This week we begin not with rumour, but with records. 2 cousins of the late Queen, institutionalized as children, and effectively erased from public view. Their names were Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon. Their story is heartbreaking, not just because they were hidden away, but because they were forgotten by the very people who claimed to represent duty, dignity, and care. If we view the firm as a business, what obligations were neglected? If this is how insiders are treated, what does it say about everyone else? The theme of this podcast series is one where we look at the human cost of monarchy and the duty of care. Throughout all 4 episodes, I will explain the concept of the firm as a business entity and the intention to outline the series' intent to explore the human side of the monarchy, their responsibilities, and the implications of neglecting duty of care. We will look at duty of care and its legal framework, particularly the responsibility of employers regarding employees' well-being. We will explore how the royal family's responsibilities align or misalign with general business practices. The impact of failing duty of care on employee mental health and potential repercussions. Examples of relevant academic business models will be explored. Throughout the series, we will certainly look into the duty of care framework and highlight key legal standards and practices that all employers, including the monarchy, must adhere to. We will look at the well-being model and explore the psychological and organisational impacts of employee wellness on productivity and reputation. I will focus on documented cases while drawing attention to the disparities between public narratives and observable realities. I won't be speculating on any of the episodes, but I will be looking at the monarchy closely and how it operates. It is the monarchy that has stated over and over again that it is the firm and that the firm is more important than family. I'm taking them at their word, and we'll be discussing the activities of the employees within the firm and the firm's responsibilities as a business and how it provides and looks out for its employees according to the law. At no point will I name names. It will be left to the audience to decide what applies to whom, if at all. Where situations are already in the public domain, or at the very least have been documented, but possibly not been shouted from the rooftops, I will name those people and their treatment by others, because those details have now been published into the public domain, but not promoted. In this episode, I will be sharing documented examples of how public-facing institutions sometimes fail in their duty of care. Cases where discrepancies between internal awareness and public narratives raise serious questions. All of what I discuss is based on documented timelines and observable outcomes. I won't speculate. I won't need to. In some instances, what hasn't been said speaks volumes. The legislation around duty of care includes employer responsibility, mental health in high-pressure roles, and safeguarding. Interspersed will be documented cases in other institutions. My aim is to shift the focus from emotion or speculation to structure, responsibility, and institutional behaviour. Using the description used by the UK royal family, being referred to as the firm, enables me to look at and explore duty of care, negligence, and harmful decision-making without naming anyone. Let's have a look at the story behind the Queen Mother's nieces, Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon. That case was publicly confirmed in the 1980s and is thoroughly documented, despite the secrecy around it. They were institutionalized as children, declared dead in official records while still alive, and reportedly received only minimal contact from their family. From that documented case, there are some acts which cannot be ignored, and discussions can be held on areas such as neglect, class-based cruelty, and performative image control, and how that legacy lingers. Let's take a look at the first in our mini-series. It could be called Behind the Facade, when the firm forgets its own. Neglect in plain sight. The cost of being inconvenient. From here, I will be reading direct extracts from a publication, full details listed in the reference sources at the end of the article, as per usual. What happened to Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, Queen Elizabeth's cousins, who were deemed imbeciles? This is an article, extract from an article written by Amber Morgan and published on May the 9th and updated on May the 12th, 2025. In 1987, the British public learned that Queen Elizabeth's severely disabled cousins had spent most of their lives in a mental hospital, allegedly hidden from the outside world for decades. In 1987, the British tabloid The Sun published a shocking story. Instead of juicy drama about Princess Diana's troubled marriage, the public received the disturbing news that Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, cousins of Queen Elizabeth II, had been wrongly declared dead nearly a quarter of a century ago. Not only had they both survived much longer than originally thought, they had spent much of their lives in a mental hospital. Nerissa and Catherine, born in 1919 and 1926 respectively, had developmental disabilities that were so severe they only ever reached a mental age of 6 years old. Apparently, hoping to hide this from the public, their mother, Fenella Bowes-Lyon, had them institutionalized. Later, Nerissa and Catherine were wrongly recorded as deceased in the 1963 edition of Burke's Peerage, which claimed the sisters perished in 1940 and 1961. However, the ugly truth was revealed in 1987, just a year after Nerissa's real death in 1986. Catherine, who was still alive but frail, was photographed for the Sun, and the widely distributed image shocked the British public. The controversy led to allegations of a scandalous royal cover-up, an eye-opening documentary about the disabled, women, and even a scene in the hit Netflix series The Crown that featured the Hidden Sisters. Nerissa Bowes-Lyon was born on February the 18th, 1919, in London. She was the daughter of John Herbert Bowes-Lyon, the Queen Mother's brother, and Fenella Bowes-Lyon. On July the 4th, 1926, the couple welcomed Catherine Bowes-Lyon. The couple also had 3 other daughters. Soon after both Nerissa and Catherine were born, their developmental disabilities became apparent. The 2 girls were ultimately nonverbal, and that, combined with their limited cognitive abilities, led their relatives to believe that they had a severe hereditary condition, which was likely passed down from their maternal grandfather, Charles Trefusis. Later, Nerissa and Catherine's professional caretakers discussed their disabilities, which were never precisely diagnosed in more detail. They didn't have any speech, but they'd point and make noises, and when you knew them, you could understand what they were trying to say. This is a quote, by the way, from one of the caretakers. Today, they'd probably be given speech therapy, and they'd communicate much better. They understand more than you think, said Annelle Braithwaite, a nurse who cared for the girls, stated according to the Daily Mail. Another caretaker, named Dot Penfield, said, "They were no problem to look after, but they were mischievous, like naughty children. Catherine was a scallywag. You could scream at her, and she'd turn a deaf ear." At the time, many families went to great lengths to hide their disabled relatives from the public eye. For a family with ties to the British royals, this was even more of a priority. Given that it was then common practice for aristocratic families to hide certain relatives from society to avoid embarrassment, Nerissa and Catherine weren't the only ones with ties to the royals to be tucked away. In 1916, King George had sent his son, Prince John, away to the family's wood farm at Sandringham Estate due to the child's severe epilepsy. For the Bowes-Lyon sisters, the decision to institutionalize them came at the hands of their mother, Fenella, years after their father died from pneumonia in 1930. The girls were initially sent to Arniston School, an institution that was specifically designed for the disabled children of aristocratic families. But then, in 1941, the Bowes-Lyon sisters were moved to the Royal Earlswood Mental Hospital in Red Hill, Surrey. when Nerissa was 22 years old and Catherine was 15 years old. Curiously, Fenella's sister, Harriet, had her 3 daughters, who had a similar disability, institutionalized there on the same day. Nerissa and Catherine would be virtually hidden until 1963, when the publication of Burke's Peerage, a reference book about the British aristocracy, listed Nerissa and Catherine as having died in 1940 and 1961. Nearly a quarter of a century later, in 1987, it was revealed that Nerissa had actually died just 1 year earlier, in 1986, and Catherine was still alive. Why am I not surprised by the very first sentence in this small paragraph that I'm going to read out? In 1987, a photographer from The Sun posed as a relative of Catherine Bowes-Lyon and successfully gained access to her facility. The British public had long believed that both Catherine and her sister Nerissa had died many years ago, but there was now clear evidence that Catherine was still alive, and while Nerissa was dead, she had died only a year prior. Before long, a photograph of Catherine looking weak and confused appeared on the front page of The Sun, with the headline, "Queen's cousin locked in madhouse." A scandalous story soon unfolded in the media. Not only were the sisters institutionalized, but they had apparently been hidden from the public for decades, and they were also wrongly declared dead. This sent shockwaves through the UK and led to a harsh backlash against the Bowes-Lyon family and allegations of a royal cover-up. The public wanted to know how and why the women were recorded as deceased and why their family members had seemingly abandoned them. Buckingham Palace released a simple statement regarding the news. It stated, "We have no comment about it at all. It is a matter for the Bowes-Lyon family." Meanwhile, the Bowes-Lyon family was scrambling to do damage control. Some relatives suggested that Fenella Bowes-Lyon had wrongly declared her daughters dead by accident, perhaps filling out forms for Burke's Peerage in an incomplete manner. Later, other relatives fought back against allegations that no one in the family had ever visited the sisters at Earlswood. Lady Elizabeth Anson, for instance, insisted that there was no attempt at a cover-up, and that many relatives had visited the sisters regularly. But a general manager for the East Surrey Health Authority said both sisters had regular visits from their families up until the early 1960s, when one of their closest relatives died. Since then, they have had few visitors. Dot Penfold, a former ward sister at the hospital where the Bowes-Lyon sisters stayed, also said that they went years without visitors. "The impression I had was that they'd been forgotten," she said. Meanwhile, some members of the public argued that the sisters should never have been placed at Royal Earlswood Mental Hospital in the first place. Since its inception, the hospital had a notorious reputation for being overcrowded and even faced allegations of abuse. When Nerissa Bowes-Lyon died at Earlswood at the age of 66 in 1986, just 1 year before the Sun story came out, no one from her family attended her funeral. She was laid to rest at Red Hill Cemetery and given a meagre grave consisting of a plastic marker with her surname and a serial number. Though Catherine was still alive when the news about the sisters broke, much of her life was reportedly lonely, even after her fate was revealed. An administrator at the mental hospital where Catherine lived described her as an elderly, frail old lady, one who finds it very difficult, perhaps, to understand this sort of thing and what's going on in the world around her. She really is little more than a child. That same administrator claimed that Catherine had not been visited by a family member since the 1960s. And even after the story broke, there was still no evidence she had received any visits from relatives. In 2011, a documentary called The Queen's Hidden Cousins premiered on British television. The film sought to unpack the broader historical trend of UK society's upper crust apparently hiding disabled family members. There's more in the article, and I'm not going to read all of that. I'm just trying to extract important and very interesting as well as useful paragraphs from this article, which you will be able to read in more detail when the article is published on the website. Another section, not from the article, which is me writing now. If the UK monarchy like to refer to themselves as the firm, then if they wish to throw out phrases and descriptions like that without scrutiny for such an entity, then it invites the same scrutiny, and in my opinion it should not be a law to itself, where they can pick and choose what they do and when, and treat people how they like without question. Accountability and transparency expected of any business or corporate entity. Duty of care becomes a workplace responsibility. Public funding makes it a public interest. PR manipulation becomes a strategic branding, not family privacy. And neglect, secrecy, or harmful practices become failures in leadership and governance. With the fairy tale replaced with structure, in essence, it begs the questions around how they operate, who they protect, and who they silence. Main talking points arising from this view. Framing the firm as a business. Like any business, there are legal obligations. Health and safety, reasonable adjustments, disclosures. Chronic health conditions hidden in plain sight. Evidence in front of our eyes. Non-royalists can see it plain as day, but as usual, get the usual groups to deflect attention elsewhere with nonsense. Evidence in gait, posture, speech, coordination over time. Public footage out there versus the complete absence of acknowledgement. Why it matters. Hiding health challenges implies weakness, which reinforces stigma. The silence also creates an unsafe precedent for anyone working within or around that structure. Contrast with other public figures. Consider against other international figures, for example, US presidents, activists, world leaders who have disclosed health conditions and remain respected. Legal echoes. UK Equality Act 2010. Workplace adjustments. Transparency expectations for publicly funded institutions. Summary about Nerissa and Catherine's experience or experiences. Focus in terms of what has been read out, and also the full article and other publications written about the sisters. Focus. Institutionalization, secrecy, and betrayal. Style. Class, image control, and what it says about the firm's treatment of vulnerable family members. The tone. Everyone who knows of that story will know how they feel about it. When you have read articles on the situation, you will no doubt have a range of emotions about how that situation was handled by the firm. And the message that's coming through from all of this is this. If that is how they treated blood relatives, what hope is there for outsiders? Some food for thought. When silence is strategic, it becomes structural. And when that structure is built on hiding pain or need, the cost isn't just internal, it's cultural. When health is hidden, power is protected. The firm's silence on illness speaks louder than any royal wave. You can't fix what you refuse to admit exists. If it were any other workplace, lawyers would be involved. Not every disappearance is a mystery. Some are policy. Behind the gold and glitter lies an HR nightmare. I'm going to read a few extracts from a framework explaining about duty of care and the employer's responsibilities. There will be, as usual, more than one reference source about this. There are multitudes out there on duty of care, and there are a range of various diagrams and images, again listed in the reference sources. So this is just a very, very brief summary, because for one, you wouldn't want me to read word for word all the way through the legal side of things. But it's just main headings, and hopefully when you read this, hear this, see this, if you're watching the podcast, you will be able to, I am sure, cross-reference with what you have heard me say about Narissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyons and the conditions and where they were placed, and all the things that go with that, visitors or no visitors, and all those things that I've already read out. And then you can make your own conclusions about any elements, all or some or none, about the duty of care and what your views are, what your thoughts are in terms of that particular case. And then you can also think of the royal family as it is now, and the everyday way that they go about things, how they do things, and have done likewise the same when the Queen was alive. So really, this sort of summary of the duty of care, and also I'll be coming on to a model, a psychological model. Again, it's going to be a summary, but the full details will be on a link, and you can explore that as well. But I do believe that the duty of care and that model of the psychological implications of particular environments that people are working in, I think that in itself is probably at the heart of it, because once you've got that to refer to, whatever the situation is, whether it be the two sisters, whether it be something that's happened recently, something that's happened in the last few decades, or something that hasn't happened yet, and if it does appear, you can think, oh, is that a duty of care issue? Let me just research that and just go and have a read and remind myself about it. So that's the purpose of this. It's just a summary. There's a lot more behind each of these sort of themes. Like I said, it's not for me just to sit and read out to you. One, apart from it being boring for most of you, I would say that it's the kind of thing that you would look up if you had a query about something. So it's just useful to have it to hand and to look at and to think of what's gone on in your lifetime that you can remember, as well as any history that you've learnt over the years via education. So, let's have a look at this summary. Duty of care. The legal obligations of UK employers to safeguard employee mental health and well-being. In the realm of employment law, the recognition of mental health and well-being as essential aspects of workplace safety has significantly grown. Employers in the United Kingdom are not only responsible for their employees' physical safety, but also have a legal duty to prioritise and protect their mental health. This article, and I should remind you, it's just a summary from just one article. This article delves into the duty of care that UK employers owe to their employees concerning mental health and well-being, exploring the legal implications associated with non-compliance. Understanding the duty of care. The duty of care refers to the legal obligation imposed on employers to take reasonable steps in ensuring the health, safety and well-being of their employees. In the UK, this duty extends to encompass both physical and mental aspects, emphasising the need to provide a supportive and mentally healthy work environment. Employers must acknowledge and address potential risks and stresses that can impact an employee's mental health, such as workplace harassment, excessive workloads, inadequate support, and discriminatory practices. The legal framework. The UK's legal framework establishes various laws and regulations that form the basis for employers' duty of care towards their employees' mental health and well-being. The Health and Safety at Work Act 1974 serves as the primary legislation governing workplace health and safety, outlining employers' general duty to ensure, as reasonably practicable, the health, safety and welfare of their employees. This legislation is complemented by the Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, which detailed employer-specific responsibilities, including conducting risk assessments and implementing appropriate control measures. Furthermore, the Equality Act of 2010 plays a crucial role in protecting employees' mental health. This legislation prohibits discrimination, harassment and victimisation on various protective characteristics, including disability. Mental health conditions can be classified as disabilities under the Act, granting affected employees the right to reasonable accommodations and safeguarding them against discrimination or harassment related to their mental health condition. Legal implications. Failure to fulfil the duty of care concerning employee mental health and well-being can result in significant legal consequences for employers. If an employer neglects their obligations and an employee suffers harm as a consequence, the affected employee may bring a claim against the employer. Such claims may include allegations of negligence, breach of statutory duty, or discrimination. Negligence claims require the affected employee to establish that the employer owed them a duty of care, breached that duty, and that the breach caused foreseeable harm. To avoid liability, employers must demonstrate that they took reasonable steps to address mental health issues, such as providing training and support mechanisms and implementing appropriate policies. Laws that the monarch is exempt from. Since 1967, exemptions have been written into more than 160 British laws to grant sweeping immunity to King Charles and the Queen before him in his capacity as monarch. Paying taxes. Under the Sovereign Grant of 2011, the King is not legally liable to pay income tax, capital gains tax, or inheritance tax, because the relevant enactments do not apply to the Crown. The same rule applies to the income from the Duchy of Cornwall, which Prince William owns. Racial, ethnic, and sexual equality laws. In the 1970s, the British government introduced laws against racial and sexual discrimination in the workplace, which were later folded into the 2010 Equality Act. However, documents by The Guardian at the time revealed the Queen was reportedly exempt from these laws, and it continues today with King Charles. This means that any individuals working for the royal family cannot file a complaint to the court if they faced any discrimination under the categories of race, sex, and equal pay. A spokesperson from Buckingham Palace previously told reporters that the royal household and the sovereign complied with the provisions of the Equality Act in principle and in practice. As I stated a few minutes ago, the full list of 160 laws that the monarch does not have to adhere to is contained within the reference sources. There are a number of academic models, business models, relating to psychological well-being. And one of the ones that you will see appear several times in any kind of reference search that you do about this sort of area of activity is the 6-factor model of psychological well-being. And it was a theory developed by someone called Carol Riff. And as I said, she appears in many different reports. Very interesting. But rather than me go through even one of those in any kind of detail, I thought that would be too much, too heavy, and probably in some cases may come across as being dull. But it is important. It is something that is used, and which is why it keeps appearing in various research documents. But I just thought a very, very brief summary, literally 5 lines, that describe what it is, what it covers. Even within the summary, there are links there that when you click on them, they'll take you directly to more information about that particular aspect of the 6 factors, and as well as the headings that I've put in the reference sources at the end of the article. So let me just very quickly read these few lines which set out to describe what the main areas are, what they cover in this 6-factor model of psychological well-being. It's a theory developed by Carol Riff that determines 6 factors that contribute to an individual's psychological well-being, contentment and happiness. Psychological well-being consists of self-acceptance, positive relationships with others, autonomy, environmental mastery, a feeling of purpose and meaning in life, and personal growth and development. Psychological well-being is attained by achieving a state of balance affected by both challenging and rewarding life events. Recap and conclusion. In this first episode of 6, we have had a brief look at what happens when health, particularly visible chronic health conditions, is hidden, downplayed, or outright denied by the institution known as the firm. We are not talking about privacy. We are talking about patterns. Patterns where silence becomes a tool of control and vulnerability is treated as a liability. In any workplace, an unacknowledged health issue would raise red flags for HR, for occupational health, even for safeguarding. But in the firm, it is often spun as dignity or not spoken about at all. I haven't named names because it is not necessary. The facts are visible. The public footage is archived, and the silence is louder than any press release. Once again, I'm just going to go through the bullet points of our final thoughts that I read out earlier. It seems a good way, a good reminder to end this first episode. And as you will see on the slides, both on the video podcast, and I have put them all in the printed the online article for you to read, because there's 3 or 4 of them. In fact, there's 4 from memory that are listed, and they've got bullet points of all the things that we are going to cover over the next few weeks. You also had in the second flyer those slides with those bullet points, so you may wish to look at that as well, to remind yourself of what was outlined in those 4 slides in particular, and what things are coming up in the remainder of this series, because believe me, it's worth you listening and watching all 6 at your convenience. But trust me when I say that they will come in very, very handy in the future. Of that, I am certain. So, final thoughts. When silence is strategic, it becomes structural. And when that structure is built on hiding pain or need, the cost isn't just internal, it's cultural. When health is hidden, power is protected. The firm's silence on illness speaks louder than any royal wave. You can't fix what you refuse to admit exists. If it were any other workplace, lawyers would be involved. Not every disappearance is a mystery. Some are policy. Behind the golden glitter lies an HR nightmare. That's the end of this first of 6 episodes. I hope you found it enlightening. I hope you think about all that we are talking about in these podcasts, about the royal family as the firm. It's a phrase they use very often. It's a phrase that they sort of say that they adhere to out of duty. Well, if they are the firm, in my mind, they are a business entity and should be held responsible like other businesses around the globe. But that's a whole different discussion. But that's what I'm doing in terms of these few podcasts that are coming up. It's about, like I said, I'm not naming anyone other than where things have been documented already and there are photographs and names, as there are with this one, and you'll see in the article, of the Bowes-Lyon sisters, and a range of photographs around that. I didn't put them on the slides, but they will be in the article. So anything that's documented already, in my eyes, I can quote, because it's there, it's public knowledge. Anything else which has gone on, is going on, and may well go on in the near future, I won't be naming. I don't see any need. It's about putting each time a framework around what's going on, what can be seen, and then equating it to the legal frameworks that are out there. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to name people, and as I said, there is no need. It's all a matter of every one of you, when you hear something, read something, see something, you will have, like anyone, your own thoughts on what that article, that incident, or what you've just seen footage on TV or on a social media platform. You will have your own thoughts as to who is being referred to, what is happening, and so on. All I'm saying is, with that as a backdrop, keep cross-referencing in your mind about the elements that you remember in terms of duty of care. And when you become familiar with it, the model, the psychological model of the kind of things that people look to in terms of sort of moving forward. But definitely the duty of care element, and look at it from a business and how it operates and the duty of care legislation that governs it. And if you do it that way, it makes all of the game playing and the distractions and the ridiculous articles that are put out about just things that are not in anyone's mind, but because a whole group of people decide or are told to write articles about the same heading and the same people, it's pretty obvious what's going on there. It's basically fit for the bin. Ignore it. It's a distraction. It's done for a reason. And when they all write the same headline and almost word for word the same things in the article, it's not rocket science to know what's gone on. They obviously want to still receive a salary for something, so they do it. But they don't even do it well. It's so obvious that so many of them all writing the same things about the same incident that nobody beforehand cared about. And when they've written it, most people still don't care. It's distraction. So if you recognise that and then go back to this framework of duty of care, legal requirements, what it expects from businesses, and just use that as an analogy. When I say analogy, the firm as a business, it makes life a lot easier in terms of what conclusions you come to. So I'll leave it at that for now. As usual, I look forward to all of your comments, post-podcast, and any comments that you have to make on any of the platforms about this area of work of mine is most welcome. So, see you all on Sunday night, and discussions throughout the following week to do with what you've viewed and your thoughts as you've had time to think about it and go over some of those things a few times. So, it's bye from me. Bye from Ivy. Bye.
Never up, never down, never. Like a theme in a song, clever. Feeling high, feeling low at the same time. Feels so right, then I'm wrong, hoping I'll be fine. But I get up, I always do. I never think, I always do. Never thought I